Well, this is 21st Century Reformation. I'm J. Dan Gill, and we're just happy to be here again with Anthony Buzzard, our dear friend and colleague and contributor, a very important contributor to our work at 21st Century Reformation. We're here just enjoying your library. I think you may have the nicest, most extensive library I've ever seen with an individual. But thank you for having us again.
You're very welcome.
Very much.
So glad you're here with your camera team.
Oh yes. I thought while we had a chance, we might ask you just a little bit about your history. I know that you were born in England, and give us a little background.
Considerable time ago, I was born in 1935 in the south part of England. I'm a southerner. They say that in England the southerners are the quiet, reserved ones. It's the opposite of the States.
Yeah,
the northern people are the ones who offer a cup of tea. Anybody comes, very friendly. But in England, yes, I was born in Surrey, the county of Surrey, and my parents were naval people. My father was an admiral, retired as a rear admiral, and actually was distinguished by being the youngest director of naval intelligence in the British Navy. So he had a way of, I think, trying to isolate problems and put his finger and try to sort out problems. And we were taught that life is about trying to unravel life, to see what it's all about. His father was physician to King George V and VI. He was the personal physician to those two kings. And was distinguished in the medical field, obviously, was Regius Professor of Medicine at Oxford. Not really a believer in God with any certainty. He was an agnostic, I remember that. A very frightening person, rather alarming. Some grandparents can be scary to the young ones.
Yeah.
So I was sent to a boarding school, and this is of interest to Americans. We were sent away to school at the age of 8.
Wow.
I think it's a mistake, looking back on it, in some sense. I don't think you should separate children from parents for 2/3 of the year from 8 years old onwards. I think that's not a good idea, but it was perceived, rightly or wrongly, that the best academic education was to be had in the private school system. So we did that. Then later, at the age of 13, went on to the public, what we call public school. It's actually a private school. Public because those boarding schools were the first to go public. Anybody could go there, but they were fee-paying.
I see.
But they were not just local. So public in that sense, but what an American would know as a private school education. Right. And again, that was perceived to bestow on you the best that education could give. I think socially it wasn't a good idea, but that's my reflection from many years later. So I studied at my private school, high school level, languages really. And we were specialists. In the British system, when you were 16, you specialized. But we did what our talents led us to do. In my case, that was language. So we did heavy work in French and German.
Wow.
And then I went on to Oxford to study French and German. After studying law for a while, I got very bored with law. So I went back to languages and then graduated at Oxford with a master's in foreign language, French and German.
Wow.
That's been very useful in theology because I want to tell you, Dan, some of the best work is done by French writers.
Oh, yes.
And German writers. Marvelous. Roman Catholic, French writers, German, Protestant and Catholics. Marvelous work in the field of Bible study and theology. So then we came to the States much later, carrying with us this issue of a title, which is of interest as conversation piece only. It means nothing, has no financial advantage. But they gave grandfather, Edward Farquhar Buzzard, they gave him a sir, a baronetcy. It's not a knighthood. A knighthood is also a sir, but that dies with you. This is a sir, but it's a baronetcy, sir. I think Isaac Newton had that too. He was a baronet.
Okay.
It's given for distinguished work to the royal family. That's the idea behind it, that you mark a family for the good work it did on Her Majesty's or on His Majesty's service.
Wow, okay.
That's not a bad idea, provided, it's treated in proportion to what it really is. Simply a distinguished service for the royal family, and it goes through the elder son.
I see.
When you die, it goes to your elder son. If you don't have a son, it goes to your nephew.
I see.
In my case, I only have daughters, so it would go to my nephew, who's become Sir Johnny Buzzard.
Wow. Okay.
And it means nothing in terms of financial gain, and it gives you no position in the Parliament. That's the House of Lords. That's a higher level of aristocracy.
I see. I see.
But it's of interest to Americans who want to know, how does this happen? Not an American phenomenon.
Not familiar with these things.
Not familiar with
these things. Yes, right. It's not.
And I think it's good, though, that we look back at our ancestors and see the enormous amount of work that goes into us, not only DNA, but the prayers that were offered for us, the talents we inherited from our parents and so on. All of that's should be recognized. You know?
Well, you have a very musical family, if I could divert this for a moment. I know you've had a great love for music.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about all of that.
Music was cool. In the public school, private school system, it was very cool to play cricket, to be on the team, and equally cool to be in the choir.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So academics were cool too. You know, we were supposed to be as good as we could be in those fields. So we sat in that chapel in England at the private school, in the private school setting. And I should mention this humorous story that I remember no sermon from those days at all. You know, the sermon was delivered every Sunday, and we went to chapel every day. We had the Bible read in terms of 1 or 2 verses every day. I don't remember any of that. We weren't into Bible as Americans are. And only one sermon is stuck in my memory, and that was when the Reverend O'Heck came to visit the school. And I learned since that time, by talking to a friend of my sister's, that Reverend O'Heck was quite well known in public school circles. He did the rounds. And he was an American who addressed public school boys, and he preached about Samson. And he said something like, Samson was a strong man, looking down on 600 little boys in their grey suits and their grey caps and their grey shawls and ties and all of that. And he said, Samson was a strong man. And we were riveted by this accent. We couldn't believe that anybody could speak English that way. I thought, this is marvelous. You know, where did they speak like that? Well, this was America. I never imagined I would come to America. Now, the point of the sermon, I don't know. He said something about Samson having an ice cream machine which had cogs and wheels and feathers and whistles. And then he said, did it work? No! And his big American voice boomed down among these 600 little boys in their grey suits. I don't remember the point of the sermon at all. I've lost
you remember
that. I remember that sermon. And we didn't do theology as the Americans do. We didn't do Bible. We didn't discuss the Bible in that Church of England setting.
Isn't that interesting?
So different.
So then you, again, thinking about your musical inclinations, your brother is in music, and
yes.
you certainly were.
That's
this
right.
was something, was that
Yes.
encouraged by your
Yes.
parents?
Yeah, my mother was very musical and went to all of her children's concerts always, you know, faithfully. My brother was particularly gifted musically. You could take him to a pantomime when he was about 2 or 3 years old. He would come back and play on the piano all of those melodies with all of the harmonies. It's an extraordinary gift. I never had that kind of gift at all. But that led him into a musical career. He went to the Royal Academy of Music in London and got his degree in composition and piano.
Wow.
And then subsequently taught piano in a private school setting for his career. Very gifted. Played the organ a lot.
Wow.
My sister sang in the Academy of St Martin in the Fields, Neville Mariner, very famous choral group in London, perhaps the most famous in the world, and sang as an amateur in many countries and made CDs and so on. As a singer, not as a professional though, but loves music and organizes music all over the place. I was an oboe player. I was made to play a wind instrument at the private school at the age of 13. Badly taught, but one has this compulsion that one's going to defeat this instrument and get a good sound out of it. So I sort of gave it up for many years as I was working at the Bible much more extensively. Came back to it in later years, and I found that, and this is encouragement to older people, that you can actually do as well or even better when you're maturer and more balanced.
Well,
yes, you can. Your fingers don't fall apart. Your brain doesn't fall apart necessarily at all. And probably it encourages, you know, control and so on if you practice an instrument daily. So that was music, and we loved that. It was a cool subject. What was not a cool subject in the private school setting was religion.
Wow.
RE, religious education, was something you had to do. And often in a school setting, somebody would be put on to teaching that, who didn't really want to do it, but somebody had to do it. And the clergy, I do remember from my private school setting, were the least cool. It was cool to teach language or mathematics, but the clergy were the ones we didn't take seriously. And I regret that. But he had a hard job convincing us boys, you know, that religious education had any value. I think that suggests a quite different approach from America, where everything's a Bible. If it isn't McDonald's, it's a church. And everybody's into gospel music and gospel bookstores, Christian radio. That's a phenomenon that does not really exist.
That's not England. Isn't it interesting? We wouldn't think that, I suppose.
No. So we had to come to you, you know, to learn the art of how Bible is done. Really.
Wow, that's great. Interesting. I notice you have a lot of photographs and pictures. Could we take a look at those before we quit? Okay, so now this is your grandfather? Is that
This is the grandfather who earned the title, the baronetcy.
Oh, wow, okay.
It's one stage higher than a knighthood, which dies with you. You know, the Beatles got knighted or something.
I see, yes.
That dies with the person. This
Okay.
is one stage higher.
Okay.
And so it goes down to the elder son. It's an
Wow.
inherited title. So he got this for being King George V and King George VI's personal physician.
Oh, wow.
He was a neurologist. He was also Reader's Professor of Medicine at Oxford, you know, an academic.
Wow. Oh,
in the
wow,
medical field.
okay. So it's in the blood, isn't it?
It's in the blood. He was not really a believer in church at all. He was but, good at what he did, clearly.
Yeah.
And then that's his son, my father. That's
Oh,
the
okay.
admiral. He was an admiral. He was director of naval intelligence at the age of 49. He had a knack for sort of putting his finger on the issues. You know?
Oh, wow.
He wasn't an academic, really, because he was in the Navy rather than university.
Wow. So he was over naval intelligence.
Yes,
then after.
British naval intelligence.
Wow, that's tremendous.
right, and retired from the Navy as an admiral.
Wow.
And here we are as a family. This is the local Church of England.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
I love to tell people the building had been there for 1,000 years.
Yeah, wow.
Americans love that, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And the list of clergy literally from 1066 onwards, almost.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing.
Here we are standing outside the building. The Admiral Father, my mother with this very severe, sort of hat style, which is different from what we do now. My sister being baptized, christened that would be. My younger brother, Tim, rather precious with a little cap.
Oh, yes, that's tremendous.
He turned out to be a musician. His career was very much in piano and organ. And
Wow.
that's me as the eldest of three.
Wow.
With our uniform,
Oh,
Americans
all
and
right.
English.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's right.
And there's Mother with a hairstyle and me smiling there. I'm glad, reasonably happy at that point.
That's right.
Dad, very, very friendly, very casual.
Wow.
Very much a people person.
Wow.
And this is my great-grandmother in
Oh,
a
wow.
house in England, yes.
Okay.
This one here, Isabel, my great-grandmother. Look at that, I think. Isn't that amazing?
It's nice to have this
It is,
connection,
it
isn't
is,
I think?
yes. And that's my father's mother. That's my grandmother.
Your grandmother on your
on
father's
my father's side.
Wow.
This is the mother my mother's side, and he was Deputy Governor of Madras in the days of the British Empire.
This was your grandfather on your mother's
side.
Okay.
Right.
I see.
Now he was a knight. He got a knighthood. He was
Oh,
a
wow.
Sir
Okay.
Arthur Knapp. His name was Knapp,
Yeah.
Knapp, and he had some control over the British Empire as Deputy Governor of Madras.
Wow.
And this is an interesting picture. That's my father and mother getting married. Look at the styles.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
That would have been
okay.
1930s, I suppose.
Wow.
Yes,
That
about
is so neat.
1930. Yeah.
Well, I love it. I think that's so interesting. That's exciting.
Yes.
Everyone has a story to
We
tell.
all have
It's
a
amazing,
story.
isn't it?
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And we're all related to each other, too.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? We're just varieties of the same
Yeah.
species. That's all.
Yeah.
There are still baronets, I think, being created, or not many now, but baronetcy was given for distinguished service to the king. So, as a Messianist, you and I can think of the joy of working for King Messiah.
Oh, yes. for
These
goodness-
people
yes.
worked for the King George, but that was a noble thing.
Yeah. And so I think I saw an article that the Atlanta paper had done on
Oh,
it.
yes, that's upstairs,
You had,
yes.
Maybe we could get a look at it